All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get ready. And that's trippy to hear yourself. Just so you know, I'm a novice at this. Okay? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. This is where I'm going to want to hold it. Okay? I can hear myself. Can you all hear me? Perfect. Thank you. I am totally new at this, so bear with me, okay? I'm thinking I can be comfortable holding it at this distance. All right. This is Protecting Your House of Worship. Thank you for coming out. I want to say that it's the United States Concealed Carry Association that sponsors these events and allows us to be here to provide this training for communities free of charge. And so I want to say thank you for showing up. It's a beautiful day, and I know you could be doing other things, but I definitely appreciate and admire a protector heart like you have to be here today. So thank you. We usually have a clicker, so I'm also used to driving. I'm used to driving when it goes forward. So bear with me as we learn through this, okay? So who is the USCCA? How many of you are familiar or are already members of the USCCA? Okay. All right, I would say, and if Chance were here, and I hope that he gets here sooner than later, but he's coaching in Whitefish today. His son has a soccer game, and so he may or may not make it to present to you all today. The United States Concealed Carry Association, they're a conglomerate that provides training. And so when I was looking at who provides training for concealed carry and defenders at large, the United States Carry Association came to the forefront of that for me as far as who is developing curriculum to implement, how to train people at the everyday people level. All right, so before, during, and after. Before, just getting your mind wrapped around what we're looking at. What is the problem we're looking at? During, of course, you're going to lean into the skills that you've practiced before the event, hopefully. And then afterwards, we're all seeing that after you use force, there's a huge amount of scrutiny on whether or not you applied that force at the right time, for the right duration, and to the right extent. Huge amount of scrutiny placed on that. So the USCCA is helpful in all of those avenues. And Pistol and Pluck, which is my business, our business, we train people in person like we are here. USCCA primarily is online and then in person as well, like sponsoring our events. So that is me. Like I said, my name is Cindy Frost. I'm a native Montanan. I say that makes me special. You can decide what kind of special that is as we go along today. But I was educated at the University of Montana. I saw Montana State somewhere represented. Again, you can see whether or not I represent the University of Montana well or not. And then when I started teaching, I found that I was incapable of paying my bills on a teacher's salary, which is really sad. On day one, as a police cadet in New Mexico, I made more than a teacher with 25 years service and not only a bachelor's, but a master's. So for me, that need to have snow tires put on my car on top of the college loans I had taken out, that was the prompt for me to try to do something else because I was going to be forever in debt as a teacher, and I couldn't stomach that. So I did. I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico. If you're not familiar with Albuquerque, I encourage you to Google it. We're on the top 10 of everything hideous, everything that you would want to avoid. Now, we do have Balloon Fiesta, so that's pretty nice also, but as far as high crime, you're gonna see just about everything there in Albuquerque. In fact, you don't come off of OJT unless you've worked through all of the violent crimes. What else could I say? My background, not only did I serve as an officer, I served as a crime scene investigator. So if it wasn't enough to just see everyday crime, then I made it my job to see the worst crime on the daily basis. So think homicide, rape, burglaries on the daily, suicides, unattended deaths, that kind of thing. So you can imagine that I would want to get back to Montana as soon as possible. And so when my partner, who later became my husband, also retired, he said, let's go back to Montana. And I said, let's go. So we did. I'm pretty sure we both said. Yeah. All right, so I am certified to teach countering the mass shooter threat. I'm certified to teach women's only programs. Let's see, lots of other programs as well, but this is our objective today, is to counter the mass shooter threat, or mass threat at large, and I hope that we can dive right into it. I don't want to spend too much time on my background, but I am open for conversation if you want to know more about that. Over to you.
All right, so my name is Ron Frost. I don't want to start any fights, but I went to Wayland Baptist University at the time, so just FYI. Anyway, I'm from Albuquerque. I was born and raised there. I speak in double negatives. I am who I am. We were 49th in education when I graduated, so I was at the top of the 49th capita thing. Anyway, so I retired from Albuquerque PD. I did 21 years there. From there, like every other cop in the country probably, I always had a side gig. I was a contractor for the Department of Energy under the National Nuclear Security Administration. I taught a lot of things, including use of force for the state of New Mexico, for the Department of Energy. I taught ground combatives, edge weapon defense, that type of thing. I am a defensive tactics guy. I still go into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu stuff. Also was in the Navy Reserve. I was in Master at Arms. I did dignitary protection and physical security. From there, once I retired, I went into the dark side, also known as federal law enforcement, and I ran security and police operations for 15 years at a national biosafety lab. Federally, back in the day, I'm certified for active shooter response, in particular low person response, tactics, and those types of things. Anyway, did a little bit of coaching for 4-H shooting and things like that. Anyway, that's me.
All right. I would say the question comes up often, and our name of our business is Pistol and Pluck. So I want to address that, because pluck, what does that mean? Pistol's pretty obvious, but let's add some foundation to why a pistol is a good tool. Montana's beauty can sometimes cloud our vision about whether or not we should have protective elements on us in God's country, whether or not we should. So I would say, as of 2022, Montana has the highest gun ownership rate out of all nations. I'm sorry, all states. Throughout the nation, we have the highest gun ownership rate. So with that, and that's a self-reporting, there's more than one firearm in 66.3% of the households. And just because of that saturation rate, I would say that having some education, regardless of how you feel about the tool, is warranted. It's interesting because the clock goes right over a lot of my slides. So some of the time I'm gonna have to turn around and see what the rest of the slide says. All right, a little bit here. As of 2018, you'll see on this graph here, Montana is represented in that blue line, if you look at the graph here. And in the pink line, you see United States. That's the rate of violent crime offenses by population. In the year 2018, Montana began exceeding that of the violent crime rate nationwide. So I always like to scan the room and see who's surprised about that we're higher than the national level. All right, moving forward, please. This is another thing I want to direct your attention to. As I look around, it warms my heart to see women also stepping up to the table, because here in Montana, females, women, from the ages of 11 to the age of 54 were more often than our male counterparts to be selected for victimization. Can that problem drag itself into your church? Very much so. And so it's important that we're aware of that. Okay? All right, this font is way too small for you all to see, but I want you to see that, I'll read it for you, okay, if you can't. In the year 2024, and when I gave those stats, you were probably thinking, that's not Polson, that's not Lake County, those stats is not here, but this is specific to Polson, Lake County. In the year 2024, you all experienced 152 instances of violent crime. And so that means that one violent crime occurred approximately every 2.4 days. So we're talking violent crime, homicide, rape, burglary, those high-ranking crimes, that should concern everybody within your community. Okay, moving on. This also is a slide that might be difficult to see based on where you are in the room, but when we look at pistol, why should we consider the pistol? The pistol is used more often than not in mass shooter, mass threat situations. The FBI says that it's seen the offenders arriving on scene with a pistol more than half the time. Any ideas about why they might do that? You can hide it, right? You can hide it so easily. And most of the time, it's not just one weapon. They're coming with multiples. So it's easy to stow many pistols on you at one time. All right, so moving on. All right, why pluck? I told you I would tell you the answer, and I promise I'm not going to start plucking your eyebrows. We're not going to be plucking chickens, none of that, although it might be fun, just to see. Pluck, it is a noun. It means courage, bravery, and nerve. And I think that most people, and it has been shown that most people credit themselves as being able to respond in an effective manner and overcome when the odds are against you and you have low probability to succeed. Most people think you're going to be able to overcome in that sideways situation. What happens in the absence of the plan, any plan, even a bad one? Do you know what you do? Nothing. You freeze. That's typically what happens. If there's no plan inside of your brain about what to do, you've never seen it before, and we all credit ourselves as being able to do something heroic. So let's look at a situation that did in fact go sideways. In a moment, we will. All right. I also want to talk about how violent crime has changed over the years. From the year 2013 to the year 2022, we see crime, violent crime specifically, here in Montana rise. Murder and manslaughter is up 111%. Aggravated assault is up 62.3%. Robbery is up 35% north of that. And rape is up 50%. So between the years, like I said, 2013 to 2022, we're seeing that spike in crime. All right. So here's where we're headed today. Do you want to tell them where we're headed?
Security challenges, what to look for in behaviors, hopefully, and some indications. Emergency operation planning. A security checklist should be thought about and talked about. And then run, hide, fight. We'll briefly go over that because you've probably been down that road. And then lastly, triage, and importantly though, triage and treating the wound and the thoughts behind that.
Perfect. All right. There are understandably some unique challenges inside of a church. Everyone's attention is focused what direction? Right here at the altar, here in the sanctuary. So everybody's attention goes here. And then what's behind us?
Stuff behind you.
Who knows unless you have somebody watching it. So that's a unique. Also, you have an open door, oftentimes policy. You want to be welcoming. That's the mission of the church, is to be welcoming sinners and saints alike. You have volunteer staff members. So what is their level, their capability, and their level of commitment to the safety of your establishment, your church, your facility, your land, your children, your resources?
So if somebody were to attack, not that they would, and that would ever occur, they know when, they know where, and what are they looking for? A high body count. So they know specifically when, because most churches advertise it, and you should, but you may have to mitigate that with some sort of security elements.
It sure would be nice if there was a neon sign above some of these folks' heads so we could just readily identify them, would it not? Be like, it's that one, it's over that one over there. But there are signs. A threat will telegraph itself just like a rattlesnake, and the rattlesnakes are waking up here as well, right? So a rattlesnake will do certain behaviors when it's poised to strike, and a human being is very similar in that, if you're paying attention. Keyword, paying attention. And so you need someones that are not only paying attention to here, but also what's behind you. In Copland, we're dispatched, right, to high probability, high risk calls, oftentimes 2 persons at a time. Now in Albuquerque, we're they called them one-man unit. And I'm like, well, when's the man gonna show up? Because, Anyway, or what's it like to be a policeman? I have no idea, is what I would say. Those are the jokes. That's all I got. Okay? I am a mom, so they're, G-rated most of the time. All right, so there are some direct indicators. The direct indicators can help us see whether or not the planning has begun. And the indirect indicators, they can give insight into a person's well-being. What is all of that based on? Observation
of behavior.
A known baseline. How is this changing? How has this person changed over time? So we don't always have the luxury of knowing these people. Sometimes they're coming straight through the door and we've never met them before. All right, next. So let's give a synopsis. What has 2020 vision? Looking back in time, what can we glean from episodes that have sadly occurred? Who are we looking at, and what's the cross-pollination of those who have become offenders? What did they look like? What were they doing? So on and so forth. On average, typically, the offender is male, and he's about the age of 34. I say about that because we've actually had offenders as young as 7 and as old as 77. Yeah.
And as we talk about these, it's like my kid said, my youngest would tell me about stock market patterns. Patterns occur and things will follow that, but that doesn't mean they have to. So even though we hesitate to give you averages and medians, they are there, but just keep that in mind. One of it is verbalized threats, grievances, and warnings. Now, they don't start out with that. It kind of, you'll see it escalate. We'll talk about it again as we go down the road, but they'll start to verbalize threats. They'll get bolder and bolder with that, just like the guy last night. If you read stuff on him today, he got bolder and bolder with his threats in his emails and his language. Language will change. You'll go from Pastor Baker to that son of a gun at that church. They begin to start with nicknames. First they write it, then they draw it, and then they'll talk it. So you'll see that escalation in these grievances and warnings. And the warnings will start, well, I'm going to get physically violent. The next thing you know, it's guns or some other weapon.
Yep. Another topic to talk about is the fact that these are individuals who their go-to answer is to be violent or to be angry. This is their wheelhouse. They haven't yet learned how to cope in other ways. And if we think about it, anger is a powerful emotion, is it not? It makes you feel like you're not weak. It makes you feel like you're in control. It is a lying emotion, but that's how you feel when you're that kind of angry. So if you're someone who hasn't learned skills beyond that, you're very susceptible to this. It's an individual who's committed not only violent, predominantly starting in the home, and also oftentimes it's against children as well. So not only partner abuse, but also against children.
They are the bullies. They are not the bullied. That is a myth from Columbine. They're the ones trying to impose their will to get you to do what they want. They do the bullying. I'm like a natural with this, you could probably tell. But they do the bullying. They are not the bullies. Their behavior will be overwhelming. They'll try and push the boundaries to get what they want.
These are individuals who have multiple social failures. So, for example, they might be going through a breakup or a divorce. They might be failing in school. They might have financial hardships. It's many things, typically, not just one thing.
They'll be delusional. This was later found out because they don't always tell people overtly that they hear things, that they're seeing things, they're delusional in their thinking, they get conspiracy theories. That's pushed on with a little bit of help from chemistry, but they'll be erratic. You'll see the beginnings of bipolar. They get down real quick with depression, but then a couple weeks later, they're up and manic and they're doing something. They got all sorts of energy. So you mind that with a little bit of help from chemistry, and next thing you know, thinking isn't going right because their thinking is into, for a lot of people nowadays, it's the video games. So how do you problem solve that? Well, their only experience would be from video games, and a lot of those are violent.
These are individuals who are socially and emotionally disturbed, and it doesn't take a PhD to diagnose it. You could say, everyone would say, that person was a little off. Everyone would you could see that as a layperson.
And then mind-altering substances, that's a big phrase, because some of them were legal. They were on Ritalin, they were on prescribed steroids, or other types of drugs that, not therapy types where, or amounts where you're getting a little HRT because of fluctuations in your blood, but life course gendering from testosterone and estrogen, and they're taking it at a high volume where it makes you more aggressive or it makes you not think normally. That on top of of Ritalin or some other drug, either prescribed, because remember, it doesn't have to be their prescription, it's just a prescription. So if anybody in the house has got it and they have access to it, there is a very good chance there's a mind-altering substance on board.
These are individuals who are oftentimes seeking fame, and you'll see that as the evidence trail unravels, you'll see there was journaling, or if they're on the younger age of the spectrum, they're turning in reports or writing assignments that really they're hallucinating, but they're writing about it. They're presenting these to the rest of the world. These are things you can see.
Uncharacteristic stockpiling of munitions and illegal firearms. Key word in there is uncharacteristic, because it is Montana, right? If you know how many you have, you don't have enough, is usually the general saying of how it goes. So, but it would be probably too a sudden interest in it, like little Johnny down the street, whatever that looks like, has always been kind of calm and cool. Suddenly he's getting questions about AR-15s, and he's wearing, and he's exhibiting these other types of behaviors, and suddenly he's a gun fanatic, and he's got interest in how that gun works. So it'll be more like that than it would be your average Joe. Remember, it really helps to know the baseline of behavior before you kind of judge that behavior.
These are individuals who are flippant about life and the fact that life is precious. They're idealizing, how do I say that? Ideations, there we go, towards suicide. And an individual who is suicidal, it literally is a razor's edge difference between suicide and homicide. I know that's hard for us to hear, but it's oftentimes true.
They will begin to isolate where usually it was us versus them. Now it's me versus them. This is also where you look for the phrases, whether it be in their writings or their language, where they start to separate the person's name and they start to give them a title. Usually it's derogatory. It's that beginning phase of dehumanization. If you think about it, back in the day, they go, oh, that officer-friendly guy used to be, only because I just saw him come in. How's it going? Anyway, but so it usually was officer-friendly. Now he's that, oh, terrible person working for the government, and you'll start to recognize nicknames, and the nicknames will start to get worse and more crude.
Right. Again, this is the totality of circumstances. It's not a single person going through a divorce or a certain person going through a custodial dispute, but it's several touch points, right? It's a totality of circumstances. You're looking at this person and seeing them unravel. Again, it takes baseline then for you to understand and see the unraveling. But in your unique position as attendees in a congregation, knowing one another, you might have purview of that beyond somebody else.
All right, it may not be one of these, but if you failed out of your college course, if you got fired and you got dumped, and then you got kicked out of your home, or you were living on the street or couch surfing, all four of those might turn you into something, and you're looking for solutions and somebody to blame.
Yes, so de-escalation, I put the question mark up there. Would you think de-escalation is possible as you're seeing this? Maybe it is. But I want you to understand that it's a very low probability that you're going to de-escalate if an individual shows up at your facility, at your church, at your campus, at your school, so on and so forth. Dressed to do what they're going to do is a very low probability that you'll have the ability to de-escalate that situation. So what would you do instead? What must you do instead? What is the option if you don't take action? What is the repercussion of that? Right, okay. We do. We have the benefit of 20/20 hindsight as we look at case examples that have existed before us, and we could go case after case after case, example after example after example, and it truly is powerful when you take a look at these and you examine them. that fighting back makes a profound difference. So having that mindset, we were driving here today, and on the way we left the house, and I said, the Department of Homeland Security, we have this strategy in place. It's written, it's literally a department strategy, that you're going to run, hide, fight. Now, it doesn't have to be in sequence, right? You don't have to just avoid fighting if you haven't first run, or if you haven't found a place to hide. You can go out of sequence, right? But let's look, if we're here discussing our faith and discussing places of worship, who's gone before us? Who serves as a good model for us to look at? And so we were kind of quizzing each other this morning, and I thought it'd be fun for us to do that. Strategies are run, hide, fight. Noah, was he running, hiding, or fighting? He was what was he doing? What did Noah do? He built a big old boat for himself and several others, part of his family and the animals too. But that was a way to hide, and God was going to hide him inside of that. Okay, a little bit trickier. That was an easy gimme, right? I could stay right in the beginning of the Bible and never get further. But what about, and I'm going to challenge some of the women here, what about Yael? What about all of the Israelites? What were they at risk if she didn't fight? The day that the enemy of all of Israel showed up at her place, what would have happened had she not fought back? Genocide. So was that the first time she swung the hammer with the tent peg? Was that the first time? Probably not. I bet you she was pretty well practiced at that. She was adept at that skill set. So again, others. Who are some others in the Bible can you think of that were either practicing running, hiding, or fighting? David, Jonah. Jonah tried to run and hide. He got hidden, didn't he? All right. Yeah, we thought that would be a fun way to break the ice. And think about, there have been others that have had to go before us and think outside of the box, like Jonah, and the consequences of that. But let's move forward. Okay. Thank you.
Know the signs. No single profile fits. That's kind of a thing of the past. There will be risk factors in the increase of risk of violence, always. Next slide.
What we're going to show you might be disturbing. We're going to show the video of what happened at
West Highway Church in White Settlement, Texas. Name of the church, name of the town, just FYI. Happened in 2019. It's a good example of a lot of things. We don't have time to discuss all the things, but let's take a look as a good example of where to start.
Yeah, I did want to bring to mind, though, that the video, it's showing a live streaming of a service, and so you'll want to look to the top left. The video has a circle around the bad actor in this video. It goes fairly quickly, not so much in the beginning. I want you to look at, was there a dedicated response? What was the communication? And what was the time? Kind of three objectives there. And I also want to just say, is there anyone here among us today that has experience or people, are you related to this incident? Because I know that can be very disturbing and emotionally triggering if you're related to this, you know people that lost lives here. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and play it. Hoping to glean from this. Yep.
White Settlement, Texas. And while we're waiting, there is a significant difference between White Settlement, Texas shooting and the one in Sutherland Springs. Right. Right. Where White Settlement had a plan to kind of fight back, and where Sutherland, that's where 26 were killed and 22 were wounded, and there wasn't really an active plan to fight back. Here we go. He's got a, can you rewind? If you look at the top, not the screen. Here we go. He's working on it. Yeah. All right. Okay. Sometimes it's like my old man said, you kind of get what you get kind of thing. Oh, here we go. Watch the upper left. A lot of things done right, and there's some room for lessons learned as well.
Some things to think about, and I know you can't see it, but the gentleman, I use that term loosely in this case, he presented himself on site, on property. He was wearing a wig. He was wearing
Had a fake beard.
fake beard.
Had a hoodie.
He had a noticeable problem with the way he walked. And everyone that was part of the security, for the most part, recognized that there were things different about this individual. And I want you to pay close attention to the fact that most active shooter events occur in gun-free zones, and most active shooter events occur inside of a situation where everybody knew, somebody knew, and oftentimes they didn't tell anybody, or somebody that could do something actionable about it. So it's important that not only do you observe it, but that you tend to that information. You also really can't see that it's about 6 seconds as the man, he gets the shotgun out, and he's standing there for about 6 seconds. We timed it. So that's how long he's standing there pointing the shotgun at the first individual. There were people with the firearms, but they could not get to it in a timely manner. Are we training with the clothing we're actually wearing? So when you go to the range, are you wearing the clothing that you're actually wearing as part of your security details? Or is that something you could fix? Also, is it different if he goes to the nursery first? Is there someone there who could answer that if he enters into that nursery scenario first? Sure. Yes, so that's a good question. There were several people, members of, I think, the security team, and so after he's down, lots of people are moving towards him. What's the problem with that we see present day anyway? If there's one, there's likely more. So who's watching now to see who's coming behind him? And how are we communicating to the rest of the congregation what to do next? Who's making the phone call? How are we getting over if it's 6 seconds that we're standing there watching him with that gun, pointing at someone that we care about? How do we get over that normalcy bias faster so that we can save lives? How do we do that?
And if you notice, the rest of the team, here comes the cavalry. That's a good thing. But does all the cavalry need guns drawn? How many people did they flag unintentionally and with good intent, but with poor practice? Maybe it could have been better. And I would dare say in Montana, I mean, in LA, you're lucky if one's got a gun. But in Montana, you've got a lot of crossfire to worry about if you don't know what's going on. So when I see that, I mean, they all ran towards the threat, good on them. But trouble is they're covering a whole lot. And thank goodness nobody popped up to surprise somebody. So, I mean, what's your response for that? Sometimes you're the shooter, you're the bride or the groom, and sometimes you're just a groomsman, or you're just a person waiting. You got to have the gun discipline, the firearm discipline, and the mental discipline. Sometimes you're not the one who draws. Sometimes you're crowd control.
Learning to control that muzzle and the orientation of it is a skill set. And so sometimes, well, we'll get into this later, but sometimes we fail to practice that, finding your shooting lane, making sure, remember your whole goal when you carry the firearm is to increase the safety. So you have to make sure that as you're holding that firearm, you're not contributing to the unsafe situation that's occurring. Yeah.
Next slide.
All right, so we're going to look next at the emergency operations plan. That's the areas that we can address before this happens a bird's eye view of what can we address, what are the different things we need to, all the bases we have to cover, so to speak, and the outfield as well, to make sure that this doesn't happen or to help minimize it so we can respond in a timely manner. So first we're looking at deterrence, then we're looking at who is standing to protect or what protective measures are in place, response and mitigation. Could we move that forward, please?
All right, this is where I would say USCCA comes in, because I'm a policy guy. When I was to the Fed, I went through the ranks. I got towards the top. But what's at the basis of it? Being a policy person, is your team covered? Because is liability coming with it? Yep, liability's coming with it. So what's your insurance, or what's your fallback? Liability's coming whether you did the right thing or not. Somebody's going to find fault in anything and everything, and you're going to get a lawsuit. You will get a lawsuit. Who's protecting whom? And on whom's, is that a word? Anyway. And on whose behalf did you act? Because remember, in civilian law enforcement, yes, you could defend yourself and others. I don't argue the point, and we'll get into that in a second as to, but does your team know the use of force laws that are applicable in the realm to which you are acting? You're not cops, even if you were a cop like me. And I'm pretty sure half of Montana, there's like retired cops. They're like everywhere. They're like weeds. They pop up everywhere, right? So, but a lot of them kind of forget on whose behalf and where things end and things start now as a civilian. Are they aware of it, and do you train your security team for it? Okay, so deterrence, because I went off on a soapbox.
You did, you went on a tangent, but that's okay, we're allowed, okay?
Hardening the building, installing countermeasures. Like signage is great for that type of stuff. Physical security measures and programs to uncover potential threats. I'm gonna touch real quick on hardening the building. What's one of the cheapest ways to harden a building? I mean, other than put bricks on it, I get that, but lock the doors. Lock the doors during service. That's a great way. It's also known as a sign. Put a sign up, no outside firearms without checking in with security, or just no outside firearms allowed. What does that imply? Doesn't make you a gun-free zone, and it usually implies, how I read it, that somebody in there is armed. I just can't be armed unless you check in with security or they know about it. One, it'll save you crossfire, at least a little bit, because you know who's armed and where. That would help. That's a way to hire it, and that's a nice little countermeasure that you will have at least acknowledge of who's armed, or if you don't want them armed, because you never know. Okay, sorry.
All right, so that was deterrence. How do we deter them? What are the measures we put in place? Everything that's put in place before its occurrence. Next, we're moving into protection. This is a defensive plan. We're building it, installing it, implementing all of this again before the attack, but we're looking to lock out or lock in. So the planning and the responsibilities within that measure there.
Under deterrence, real quick, programs to uncover potential harm. Because you may know the person, but you may not know the person. You could just be the church on the way home every day, and USOBs always block my path. Who knows what sets them off? Do you have somebody monitoring social media, at least locally? And, the other folks I would hit up are like, who are the huggers? Who's Gladys Kravitz? Who knows everybody about everything? I would talk to that person. I really would. I'd be like, how's Johnny doing in school? Johnny get expelled? Johnny get fired? Little Amy he's got trouble with the girlfriend? Or who's an empty nester looking depressed? That type of thing. I would talk to Gladys Kravitz. I really would. I would be like, and kind of survey the lay of the land. Because if there's a threat to one of you, also known as domestic violence, there's a threat to all of you. I can name 2 incidents, one in Albuquerque and one Southern Springs. Yeah, that was domestic violence related. Normally, a lot of the time, that's where it's going to start, a domestic violence. So if a parishioner is having a protection order or something like that, and they know they go to church, they know the time, they know the place, and they know you're going to be friendly at first. Okay.
All right, under the umbrella of protection, we're going to have designated safe rooms and designated unsafe rooms. So it's important to understand what is a safe room and what is not a safe room. We'll get into that as we go along, but that's important. If you're running, and that's a strategy, right? and we're trying to hide as well, you're going to need to know where you're going and which one is safe for you to be in. Or are you just increasing your problem by putting yourself at the bottom of a funnel? We'd call that a fatal funnel. You don't want to do that.
Designating safe rooms, training staff for armed response. This is a big building. Our church is not this big. I wouldn't want to take a shot with a little 3-inch barrel all the way across to that fireplace. I'm not that good. I don't think I was ever that good. So make sure your staff is trained and your positioning of your security element is realistic.
Right, so we're talking about the response phase right now. What is your offensive plan during an attack? Now that it's occurred, now you're over your normalcy bias, and what are you going to do to fight back? How are you communicating internally and then externally as well? How are you telling each other what's happening? How are you telling, if it's here, how are we telling folks in the nursery? How are we helping the people that are not ambulatory? A lot of things to cover here.
Yeah, run, hide, fight works when you can run, hide, or fight. But
Or if you're a baby and you can't.
then you got a problem.
Right.
So then you got a safe room. Okay. Also, responding with run, hide, fight tactics, activating your armed responders. What's the plan for that? And then we're on to mitigation.
Yes, mitigation is it's underway, the attack is underway, but how do we minimize it? And then how, if those people are injured, how do we save lives until emergency response teams can get here to do their professional job? How can we help cover that time interim in between? So how do we provide first aid and emergency services? And then, of course, that means staging. We'll talk about that also, but you have to have some emergency supplies and some basic firsthand knowledge. There are some great programs that are typically free. How many of you have taken Stop the Bleed? It's typically offered for free, very, very helpful, right to the point of how to stop an arterial burst, how to stop a sucking chest wound, those types of wounds that are necessary. Most of the time it's free, and you do yourself a huge favor if you could be that person to help stand in the gap for that need of first responders coming.
And just to keep it real, active shooter is a lightning strike. Even today's world, it's a lightning strike. Somebody having a medical event, vastly more likely. So if your security team has a medical element, good for you, because I know I could think of even our own church. They had 3, since they stood up their security team, they had 3 medical events with older parishioners and even like a not so old parishioner. But anyway, so be real with your security plan. Don't plan for ninjas coming down through the ceiling. Not that couldn't happen, but plan for every day too.
Do you want to talk about soak right now?
Yeah, so
It's his favorite.
this is my favorite. So when I get done, it's like a chemical spray, and it hurts. So we'll have a couple line up, we'll spray them. They tell us how they hurt. It'll be great. These are the jokes too.
Or
That's all
not.
we get. Okay, anyway. So what happens vastly more likely is a use of force might come into play rather than a lethal use of force. You might get a vagrant person coming in. You might get a PO'd. I was in the Navy, and I was a street cop, and my dad was a truck driver. So I'm trying really hard, okay? But so somebody comes in PO'd, and they won't leave, so you can't do it. So soak is great. It's not mace or oleoresin capsicum. It hurts, and you're gonna get wet for 6 or 7 minutes. And then that's it, done. After that, you're just wet. A lot of churches and healthcare companies, healthcare providers for their security element are switching to it because of that exact reason. Anytime use of force comes out, it's like toothpaste. It ain't going back in the tube. This ain't going back in the tube either once you go, right? But it limits your liability, and it also has it buys you time and plans, and then you go to gang fu or gun fu or whatever the fu comes to, right? So there's just things like that to remember. There are options. Okay.
All right, I think we're ready for the next slide after that gang fu. All right, so we're on to steps to developing a plan. Of course, you have to find people that would be willing to be part of your planning team because it's going to be an endeavor. You'll need at least 4 to 8 people to help you, and we're saying the term people.
Why do we say people? Men and women. That's why, right?
Right.
You're going to double your needs change. Women's ministries They're their own thing too. They have a different perspective of things. If you have a use of force versus all sorts of other things, are they trained? And you got to make sure everyone's trained. Your normal volunteers or regular volunteers and the guy that's just filling in or the gal that's filling in, do they know the procedures of what's going on?
Yep. So think about this. I was at a planning meeting yesterday for our church, and they were looking to expand their coffee bar because it turns out it's pretty popular. It's a way of getting people, here's your caffeine in case you didn't get it on the way in, or here's your decaf, whatever. It's a way of making people feel comfortable, and we're handing it to you. What they were wanting to do was create a coffee bar, and they said that they were frustrated with people coming in and around behind the bar. So they wanted to make it one way in, one way out. And of course, what did my brain do? One way in, one way out, that's creating a fatal funnel. So we have to think about how to change that, because they wanted to change another area of the church as well so that there was no point of egress there. You have to think about how are you getting out, and don't paint yourself into a corner, hopefully ever. And if you're in that corner, hopefully you have the tools to defend. Oftentimes people in the nursery or so on and so forth, they're in a corner, so we have to equip them. That's why we say people. Outside of your normal traditional roles, we have to have other people looking at the situation also. So law enforcement officers, of course, you all have a unique perspective. When you come in, you see things, you hear things, and oh, I heard fatal funnel, you heard helpful to keep people that shouldn't be back there, but I heard painting myself in a corner. So it's good that you have people across your spectrum of congregants come in and give you that feedback. So subject matter experts on top of law enforcement.
A lot of times you'll run into retired military, retired whatever, and they will have a good source of subject matter expert planning, training ideas. They're probably in Western Montana. I think they all are. You just got to get them involved and take their advice. Step 2, determine your goals and objectives for each one of these areas. Deterrence, protection, response, and mitigation.
Right. Okay, then moving on to step 3, after we've determined certain goals for that step 2, step 3 is the detailed courses of action. How do we go about it? It's all one thing to come up with the ideas, but now how do we actually take the steps to implement it? That's step 3. Go ahead.
So i.e. lockdown, because where do all these incidents start? The parking lot. The parking lot's where they start, and then they go to the lobby. How long does it take you, if you've identified your threat out in the parking lot, what's it really take you to lock the door? How fast can you do it? Have you tried? What's your goal? What time did you decide, this is how fast we got to get things in lockdown? And how did you determine that? And then what about folks in the parking lot? What's the plan? So those types of details you got to get into. How long does it take us to lock out and lock down? What's the difference? And do people know the difference? Right? That type of thing. Do you monitor it on camera constantly, or do you have somebody out there? And if somebody out there by themselves, or are they out there with somebody? What's your common routine operation of that type of thing?
All right, let's move on to step 4, please.
A lot of it should be, for a number of reasons, and I'm beyond my law enforcement 30-something years. I don't do math in public, but I was an HR guy. I was an HR investigator. That's what I did for a federal entity. So yeah, everything in my mind is based on that. It will, constantly. Yep. And might even cut you a break on insurance too.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was a human resource investigator. I investigated human resource stuff. Okay.
All right, yes, sir. Couple things. We would encourage every member of your team to do the due diligence, although we have constitutional carry in Montana, to go ahead and also get your concealed carry permit, because what does that achieve? A background check. So you get the background check, and then have some standards on the range for how are you able to engage in. And sometimes the threat stands still. like in that situation. But oftentimes the threat is moving, so it's not just a static target that you're practicing your skill set on.
But when you determine the standard, you got to stick to the standard for everyone.
Maybe you could give him a job. Maybe you could give him his unique job. So, for example, our kids were not, when they were little, were not equipped to be, right, answering somebody to the door that a threat or a grizzly bear or a mountain lion or whatever was in our yard, right? They're not equipped. But their job was to hold on to that bear spray. That's your job. So give him maybe a job if you see fit.
All right. Sorry, we got step 4. A verbal scenario, a tabletop. Get together with your leaders and who's on your team and tabletop a scenario and see what people do. See if they think the way you think they're going to think. It's a lot of words, but are they going to respond the way you think they're going to respond? And is everybody on the same page or at least in the same stadium for that matter?
Yeah, so you're just literally taking out the blueprint of your facility and you're standing around your subject matter experts, your volunteers. You're standing around and you're looking at that blueprint and you're looking at what's the likely place that this person's going to come through. What is the likely place? And you run through what will your response that you have now in place through the other steps, what will that response look like? And then you actually step out into that physical space with people, walk it through. This is not pedal to the metal. This is not people committing to felonies or anything like that. It's literally walking through it to see whether or not you could and whether or not you have the right number of people in that space or does it require more, because a blueprint is oftentimes different than the actual space that you're working with.
And then if you can, you're going to conduct a full exercise. You're going to actually do it. And this is when I say don't cheat the system. Cindy and I, we run scenarios frequently with people, action versus reaction drills, just live action drills as much as we can. We get people to dance, just playing. So live action, don't cheat yourself. Stick to a scenario. Try not to plan it yourself. Don't make your scenario fit what your plan is. Make your plan fit the scenario. But full scale it, don't cheat it. Be honest with yourself. If you carry or whatever that looks like, wherever you think you need your people, and it turns out the scenario they come in the back door rather than the front door because somebody forgot to check the back door, roll with it.
Sometimes your greatest gains are through failures. So allowing yourself to not always win is okay. It's okay if you don't always win as long as the end goal is to win. All right, step 7 is to review and revise. So you just did a walkthrough, a moving walkthrough of a challenge you see, and you've studied it, you've put it onto play, and now where did you come up short? What could you do to fix it? What is necessary to make sure that you don't fail? And then, of course, we have to maintain it. Strategies, crimes, trends, all of that evolves over time, so we have to make sure we're addressing what's current. Last night, we saw the man run through that security point, so he fully committed initially right straight to it. So we're going to have to think about that, because that's a different approach. This man that we just watched here, he came in disguised, he stood up, he was among everybody, whereas like last night, that was a different situation, he just stormed it. There's different scenarios, you can't always be successful for each one, but we're going to keep planning until we do.
If you read about it, and if you look at it, they were on him. He moved, they knew it. They already suspected it. What I would hopefully suggest is you have a plan. If you see somebody being sketchy or cagey, what's your security plan? How do you isolate and then call 911? Do you have that? Are your greeters trained to deal with difficult people? Are they trained to communicate with the security element at your church to know that, hey, this is a threat without tipping off that person? What's the communication plan look like? What's it really look like? And then, because you don't really want to ask that, you can ask the person to leave, but you really want to avoid kind of contact if you can, and let law enforcement do law enforcement things.
All right, let's move forward, please. Okay, so we're on to security checklist now. This is where you're going through the physical building and you're adhering to the checklist to make sure you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's and all of those things. Your outer doors. Visitors are entering through the main door, so you know where they're coming from. You know that it's not somebody sequestered in a room already, that they're coming through one door, and that's where your attention is.
Be great if they had single action locks. You can push it out, but you can't open it from the outside. The inner doors. Inner doors should have deadbolts. Auto locking would be great. And a backup door security, such as a door jamb, you could shove under the door very quickly without much thinking.
Virginia Tech was a nightmare. Virginia Tech was a nightmare because they had doors that locked, but they needed a key. And where is the key? In an oh crap situation. And what happens to your fine motor skills when you're under a high degree of stress also? So having a key is no bueno.
All right, inner doors have deadbolts. Auto locking, we went through that. Shades. If you can see in, this is where you kind of want to hide. Put something over the window, whether it be a shade, paper, whatever. But make sure as you're walking by, you can't see in or what's going in.
All right, so quickly you want to be able to identify also, so have you done your homework? Are the safe rooms labeled safe so that you can see that your people know through a quick visual identification, this room is a room I should egress into, or this is a room I should avoid at all costs when things go sideways. So how do you do that? It could be as simple as just a color code, maybe a construction sheet of paper on that outside of that door of the color you decide as within your group, that's a safe room. You decide that.
All right, does your safe room have communications? Can they communicate with the outside world? How do they know it's safe, or how do they know it was a drill or whatever? But do the safe rooms, do they have a little backup phone to call 911 or to communicate? Ideally, it would be direct to law enforcement, but I don't know if Lake County offers that service here or not. And finally, the ability to lock down through so in a dream world, pastor or the security would have a fob that would lock the building down. They make such things, so just something to consider.
All right, so when we look at who's going to be on the team to help us, you're going to need people that are mission-minded. Will you want the person who is absolutely opposed to firearms and use of force? Will you want that person on your team? I don't know. You probably want to, make sure that you understand the situation. Maybe they need to do a deep dive in statistics and understand why we have to have the measures in place. But I understand that not everybody can. And as a mom, I know that I have fluctuated between whether or not I want to carry this or whether or not I'm not going to carry it. There's a lot of thinking about it. But when you understand, especially as a woman, that there's no other way to stop a threat in my physicality, could I stop a threat of a man if he decides to thunder me in the head? Could I? Probably not. Not even in my prime, even though I might have been delusional at the time. Really, I mean truly. Tomb Raiders, that made us all think that even at 90 pounds we could, thunder somebody else. But really, that's not true. When you think about testosterone, bone density, muscle mass, organ recovery of men, we cannot overcome unless we have the tool to overcome.
And retired law enforcement are obvious. Make sure they have the skill you think they have, and they have the skill. Retired military can be. I mean, if you're like me, I think, pretty sure everybody I met in the Navy has been a SEAL, except me, I'm pretty sure. Everybody in the Army was a Green Beret or Ranger, I'm pretty sure. Everyone I've met anyway. So, it's good to have a standard among your security team, and maybe that's part of the ministry. You go out to the range once a month or once every quarter, and you verify skills. You verify that they act the way that they're going to act, and review about that. And maybe practice draw from sitting. Have you drawn from sitting? Have you cleared the shooting lanes? Those are the kind of people you want on your security response.
Yeah, most people go to the range and they're shooting on the day that's comfortable for them, so the weather's nice. They're shooting at a target, they picked it out because they want to shoot holes in that target. There's a lot of things that we stack in our favor when we go to the range. But is that really the situation when everything goes sideways? Or should you train to see where your wheels fall off? And I would encourage you, between us and now between all of you, and probably you've been aware of this also, just because you're a member of law enforcement or just because you're a member of military, this, that, or whatever, does not immediately qualify you on a pistol or long gun or otherwise. So you'll want to make sure that you understand who is doing what and what tool do you have and where should you be inside of that equation.
All right, next slide.
All right, we told you there's going to be probably a minute. It'll probably be a minute before the whole incident is over. It's going to be some time before emergency response can build a corridor to get inside that building and make sure it's clear, and then get to the people that have been injured inside of there. So what can we do inside of those safe rooms? What can we stage inside of the first aid kits? Because a Band-Aid is probably not going to work in that situation. I have activated charcoal too in my first aid kit, but it's probably not going to be effective unless they got a bellyache, okay? Or an infection, which comes later. But you're going to need some things like 5 cat bandages or tourniquets. You're going to need those. You're going to need things that will stop a significant amount of bleeding and quickly.
There's a good example from the book about things you might look at. And think about placement. This is a big building. It would be me, a part of my security plan or emergency operations. I've had one in every room if I could, if you know, funds allow.
But certainly in your safe room, because that's where you're going. Also, a way to carry people that are injured. So an impromptu type of a cot. How do you move people that are injured that we've got to move because they're not ambulatory? That would be something that would be necessary also. But a good first aid kit that you restock. So both tourniquets as well as a compression bandage, Israeli bandages, oftentimes, sorry, I keep moving my head away from that. They contain elements to stop the bleed faster, so those are really helpful. Again, the Stop the Bleed classes are really helpful to help you know the proper tools and technique in order to stop the bleed.
And is it St. Luke here, right? Yeah, they do Stop the Bleed, and they teach it, so it's a good free resource to send your folks to if they're going to be on the security team. I know that I just looked it up. Okay.
Right. Okay, I think we're ready to move on there. So mass casualty incidents. What does a mass casualty incident? It's probably bigger than what you thought, but not necessarily. So what we mean by a mass casualty event means that there's more people needing saving than there are first responders to provide aid to them. And if you're like Ravalli County, your emergency services have not yet caught up to, and maybe we never will, the amount of people that are now here. So if there's maybe there's an accident on the highway, and then at the same time there's an incident here, and not everybody can move to every situation. So easily, if there's more victims than there are people to provide a solution, that's a mass casualty event, and that's a likely scenario across Montana. All right, we're ready to move on. How do you implement triage? So if you're sitting here and you wonder, I saw you raise your hand, so it looks like you know what you're doing. But it's one thing to have knowledge, is it not? And then when your blood pressure is going through the roof and you start having difficulty breathing, do you still know the same things? So exercising under stress, under a little bit of pressure, is a good idea, at least in the right areas of that practice. The book offers not only that plan of how to go through the different emergency operation umbrella points, but also what to put in your first aid kit, and then how to move through. It's an ugly thing to think about, but thinking about a person who you have no capabilities to assist this person further, but there is somebody here who that you can. So triage, how to spend your time wisely inside of this horrific experience. How do you do that? I wasn't familiar with it myself, but the book will actually walk you through that, and it's a good practice once you get into your walkthroughs and then your exercises to make sure that you all know how to do that. And
on your team, this is where you really want to know your team. If you have an ick situation, as I would call it, I'm not good with blood.
He's not your guy.
I'm not your guy, right? It's not good. So if you have that nurse or EMT and people that kind of dig that thing, that's a good time to know, hey, you're in charge of medical stuff. You get your little ministry together, bless your heart, good for them. And that'd be a good time to turn that over. Same thing with the other stuff involved. Okay.
Yeah, he could turn his back to the cot and help carry them off, but he's not going to stand there and look at it. It's not happening.
Those days are over. That's not going to happen.
I'm not sure I was ever there. Okay. All right, so we're looking for respiration, pulses, and mental status. That's part of the triage. Whether or not they're coherent, can form a sentence, can they tell you what day it is, and so on and so forth. It helps walk you through who do you spend the precious time that you have on. Not that everybody is worth your time, but you'll learn how to do that in a strategic manner to save lives. Are they categorized as a minor injury? Can they be delayed? Can their treatment, are they sufficiently well enough that you can move past? Or are they somebody requiring your immediate attention? Helping color code emergency services, as thin stretched as they are, will help your people and help people survive.
Because I was in DC last week for work, and you're walking from one block to another. There's like 14 different agencies, I'm pretty sure. Lake County seems like our county, where there might be 4 ambulances. So if you get more than 4 critical injuries, you have a mass incident. And that's if they're all available, I would think, because they'll always be available, right, at the right time. So that's why triage and wound care is so very important.
All right. Okay, so life-threatening injuries, how do you stop an arterial bleed? Now, those of you that are trained probably know that. Or some of us, because that's not our everyday forte, might need to refer to a plan on how to do that. Sucking chest wound is a wound you're going to need to be able to address, and rapidly, because they won't be able to breathe if you don't. Gunshot wound to the abdomen, how do you deal with that? And then a simple but very deadly condition, shock. How do we treat a person for shock? All of those things are addressed. In the book, it's not a certification, but it is helping you boots on the ground to achieve what needs to be achieved in the interim where other people are coming to help you. It's on you at that moment.
Next slide, thanks. So a security checklist. Security checklist is a great idea. We kind of went over a little bit of it, but you got to do it all the time, every time. When do you do this? Every service. When do you do this? Every time you open the building. Anytime you're going to use the building, go through the checklist. Next, or push the button thing. Doors and windows. Oh, sorry. Go back. My bad. So doors and windows, what do they look like? What should they be in? What condition do you want them in? Because we're all looking for the lightning strike. I get it. But burglaries are still real. Do all your windows lock? Do all your doors lock? Who's in charge of checking all that and making sure things are in repair? If you have people that want a ministry, checking cameras are great, because cameras are great when they work. All right, then lockdown procedures.
Yeah, so let's just talk a little bit about that. Do you want to talk about how to beef up a window? And I'll talk about how to get through that window.
Okay, so there's many ways to beef up a window. Make it thick, or you can get Kevlar. If you want to make your safe room, or your safe room has an interior window and you can't get around it, you can get Kevlar film. You can get it at Lowe's. It's a film that you put on about 3 millimeters, and you put it on like window tint. That window is now bulletproof. And it is called Kevlar. It's about $6 to $7 a square foot. Federal facilities use them to reinforce their forward buildings for their guards. It'll stop a baseball bat for well over an hour. And it's not much considering. I don't recommend putting it in every window, but if you have a safe room or windows that are more exposed than others, that's where you put it.
All right, so a safe room is a room that you can egress into that has limited amount of glass, but let's say you're inside that room, and ideally it would have 2 ways in and 2 ways out. So this door might be the way in, but then there's an exit, like an exterior window behind me. Now I might feel like I'm incapable of getting through that window, and we have to think larger than that. So inside of your safe room, having the same tool that firefighters would have, the ability to shatter that glass, even quietly, pretty quietly, to shatter the glass with that puncture tool, and then make your egress through it. Because ideally, you're making distance between yourself and the threat, but you don't want to paint yourself in a corner.
And then lockdown procedures and active countermeasures are all listed in the book. I wish we had more time to go through it in great detail, but we did not. Next slide.
All right, so safe rooms we talked about. There's 2 points of egress. It has to be that way. It just does. That's the only way that, also that you have limited purview, like somebody on the outside. This is not a safe room, right? It's not. There's too many points, too many avenues. You can't keep an eye on everything all the time. And then of course you have to stage your safe room with emergency supplies to help people in that oh crap situation, and then communication device. So inside of that, you need to have some communication, the ability to reach out beyond the room you are. Any questions about safe rooms?
All right,
What makes a room safe or unsafe?
I'm glad you did. Because safe rooms. Rooms that are lockable with solid core doors would be preferable. otherwise have a different way to stop them.
They would have no interior windows, so you can't have a view from the outside in. And if it is, it's a small window, like most schools have a very small window along the side, and they're covering that with construction paper in order to make sure that they keep at least a visual field of vision away from the threat.
Effective barricades. There are a number of these you can get on Amazon. This one just goes in under the door. And then you just take your little, and you guide it down, and it will lock in place. I'm not saying it's fire code, right? But this was, that door is now ain't gonna, until it's coming off the hinges, it ain't coming out. It's just, there's no kicking it in. You're gonna have to go, you're gonna have to be like The Shining and go through the door before you move that.
A door jammer.
Door jammer thingy. I don't wanna
Yeah.
get too technical.
They make them in smaller sizes as well, which is really handy. Yes,
You'd wanna be careful about, yeah, it's not gonna do any good if it's going out, right? So you gotta pay attention, okay.
right. Okay, what else should you stage inside of that safe room? They should obviously have that quick visual that it's safe or unsafe, so you're recognizing it as you're making your hasty retreat out of that, or your tactical retreat, which is also known as running. It's true strategy, it can be very effective. A device to block the door, like the door jammer. Tools to break the exterior, like I showed you. Some weapons. What would you use inside of this room right here if a threat came through our door and you were not armed? Please don't draw your firearm right now. Please don't do that. But I know there's a few of us that could address it if it came through the door. But what if you didn't have that? Yes. Fire extinguisher. Sure. What else? Water bottle. I heard of a woman in Alaska use a zucchini against a grizzly bear, and she was effective. So yes, it's whatever your mind can come up with. It's really a state of mind rather than the thing itself. It's your mindset that will help you overcome. Did you have a tool? Your phone, you could, yeah, that's something. Anything else? Chairs. Sure.
Every tripod thingy here.
It sounds to me, yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Right. That became a new threat or a new target for them. Yes, I understand. What I was thinking of in that particular case, and it's important that you communicate one way or another. So you're in a room and you're hiding or you're in lockdown. And you don't want to advertise that this room is safe because it's become the new place to hit for the people that are doing that. Okay, but so when the people are trying to move from the hallway to a safe room, they need a quick visual way to, and you can be as creative as you want about what that looks like. How do you indicate that this room is safe to go to in that sideways situation? And the solutions I offer might not be the same solutions you come up with. Your site is going to be unique for you and the people that work there and that it's relative to. Did you have a comment?
Yep, that's a viable solution. Whatever works, like Cindy said, whatever works for your facility works. If you don't believe in the color codes or anything like that, then another solution should be developed.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, think back to that video. Did they have a way to communicate that the threat was over? Did it look to you like they did? Or did people just start peeling in and responding in and congesting that area, really? I'm not trying to be critical, but learn and glean from that situation. But also, there was that major crossfire situation that occurred over and over again. You probably couldn't see it, but there were people responding from the back row, maybe even the main entry area, coming through with guns like this through the aisles. It was really a sideways situation. So you have to plan, Murphy's Law, that you're keeping it very simple, but also the key players are on board with what the plan is. invariably the person you need to be directing traffic is going to be either responding to the situation. You'll really have to do your homework on how to respond to the threat.
All right, next slide. Unsafe rooms are rooms with doors that do not lock easily breached, and then rooms with an interior window, unless you have reinforced that window with like a Kevlar film. But if it's got an interior window, you're gonna need to cover it. And of course, if they're easy to breach. If it's that easy, it ain't safe. All right, next slide.
That school, was that Tennessee?
Tennessee, where she shot through the door?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you remember how many people addressed that shooter as she came through the window? She shot through it first and then she stepped through it with her AR type gun. How many people met her at that front entryway there? 3 people. 3 people that didn't have a way to tend to that threat. So they were the secretary, you had a janitor, and another person. So you have to think beyond the obvious of who you're going to train, is my point. All right, the strategy, go ahead.
All right, so DHS, run, hide, fight, let's talk about that. Next slide. And just like Cindy said, remember, it's not meant to be sequential, it's meant to be options. It may change from run to hide to fight, and vice versa. Act immediately. We saw a little bit of a normalcy bias in the video where the guy already had the shotgun out, and I would say never drawn on a drawn gun unless you're gonna be moving fast, but that type of thing. So act immediately, go, I'm not sure, I'd rather be embarrassed than shot. I'm pretty sure of that. I'm gonna go that route. So get past a normalcy bias.
All right, the main goal, as we said before, is to distance yourself from the shooter. So running is an effective strategy as long as it doesn't become a stampede and as long as you know where you're going. Where is the point that will leapfrog to your point of safety?
Remember, even though we're talking about church, this works everywhere, and this is a general thing of what to do no matter where you're at. You're gonna wanna run away from the sound of gunfire and find the nearest exit. So when you get into a room, be situationally aware and figure out, where is my nearest exit? Where is it here? Where's the nearest exit here? Right there, that may get me outside. I don't know the combination, I don't know. I'm looking over there where it says exit and I know the door goes out, but just be aware.
Right, okay, next slide, please. Hide. It's an important distinction that where you hide needs to also be reinforceable, that you can lock it and that it isn't painting you into that corner. That you can have, if all else fails, you can create another path to get out beyond that room. So being able to break the glass, whatever. Hiding, it's an effective strategy, but what's the problem with hiding? You can be found. Can you see their forward movement if you're hiding effectively? No. And they are moving, they are looking, it has been said over and over again, to increase the body count. And so you're just another one waiting to be found. So hiding has to be coinciding with lock, barricade, or whatever it takes, whatever it takes. So when we said, what are the improvised weapons in this room? We as good people had some difficulty. We had some challenges thinking about what you would use as a weapon. If you're ever curious about what the dark side, the underbelly of mankind can come up with as far as tools to harm another human being, look at Google prison shakedown tools, weapons, what they find. It's astonishing what a human being can come up with to harm another human being. It's astonishing. But you have to get creative because the fight is on. You didn't ask for the fight. You don't want the fight, but it's coming through you. And the only way to stop it is by stopping it. You have to go through it.
All right, if you're hiding in a room without a lock, it's like my old man said, you get what you get sometimes. So you go to the hard corner and you wait for them to walk through the door. Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
I would agree. Take the best option. If getting out is getting out, that's the best option.
The objective is to put as much distance between you and the threat. That said, schools, churches, large bodies of people, it's a problem if you have one place to congregate after it because that can become a secondary target. So you have to be very thoughtful about how you do that.
then how to communicate that with your parish or your staff about where you're going to meet or the areas that you're going to meet. And do people know the plan? So you got to communicate the plan.
So if the school exits on their fire drill all the time out on the recess field along the fence line, according to grade and according to teachers lined up, doesn't take long for a person to realize that's what they're doing. So I'm going to hit the switch here, and now I have everybody lined up there. So you have to be creative and think outside of the box of how you're going to do that. I wish I had all the solutions, but I want you to know that we have to be bigger than the problem. We have to get more resources looking at the problem. Okay.
Next slide. Fight. So this is the joke. You're the third monkey going on the Noah's Ark, and it's starting to rain. So brother, you better fight, right? So I couldn't wait. That's in First Fabrications, chapter 1, verse 2. That was my other one I prepped. Okay. So you got to commit to aggressive. If you're going to fight, fight, right? So I don't need to tell you that, but I'll just remind you, you fight. Sometimes there's multiple defenders, but just like I mentioned earlier, nothing beats gang foo. Gun foo is always an option. And if you got a chair foo, well, you chair foo. Whatever foo works, do it.
Yes, and be wise and discerning about it, because like he said, and we saw in that video, the threat was stopped, and how many more people were challenged in their safety by other people responding to that. So you have to be discerning about it, and how do you communicate what the next threat is and what's the next movement for your group? Big challenges.
It's just a reminder, John Wick with the pencil can do a lot. So you with a chair or a fire extinguisher or anything else can do a lot more. All right. Next, there we go.
All right, we came up with some ideas, but now let's be truly creative about what would you use if you're thinking about defending a mad person that came through the door. What are you going to use now that you've had some time to think about it?
Maybe a belt as a whip, hard
Sure.
book as a club, pencil in the neck. Yep, mic stand.
What have we seen effective in the past? Even if you're not armed, what have we seen effective in the past? A team effort, so multiple people going at it on account. We've seen that effective over and over again because it's impossible for one person to see everybody all the time. So mounting a defense when they're not paying attention, that's your strategy. All right, any other ideas? That's true. And then it works as a weapon if you run out. I mean, it's a battering ram of some sort. What's that? Sure. Downside of mace, think about that for a second. Yes, and what does mace or OC spray do to you? It's an irritant, right? So it makes it very difficult to breathe for a moment, especially if it's bear spray. Ask me how I know. I went under the porch mano a mano with a raccoon that needed to get gone, and it hit the foundation. It came back at me, and it took a moment. And of course, in our academy, we had to stand at about this distance right here and get sprayed multiple times in our face and then fight through it. My point there is that if I could fight through it because I had desire to overcome and to be certified as a police officer, do you think some thug could fight through it? They can. They can. So you have to have a way. Again, so full force multiplier. I also had, just so you know, I have to tell this story. My husband, he wants to address the situation with pepper spray or mace because he has physicality to back that up. Do I have the same physicality to back up a threat that he does? That's why we feel differently about it. I also stood, I was a member of the 79th cadet class. Out of the 78th was a man named Kiet Trong. It's part of his traditional diet to eat high, very peppery, very hot food on the regular. So do you want to know what he said when he had to get sprayed? More. And he said it with this psycho-like look on his face. So the point being, it is effective sometimes, but I don't know if there's if there's an opportunity for me to say, excuse me, sir, are peppers a part of your traditional diet?
Statistically speaking, though, it's effective on 95% of the population, they claim.
Is that what law enforcement said?
That's what law enforcement says. Well, that's what Sabre and DevTech say.
Okay, but what did law enforcement say?
So I know where she's going with this. And she's right. Law enforcement's idea is to subdue and go click, click. 60% of the time, OC is effective. Oleoresin capsicum or mace or chemical spray. You're trying to buy time or subdue. So OC is effective as your mission could be. It depends on your mission and what you're doing. If I'm outside just looking to run, then OC could be effective enough at times. But they're right, there is always the disparity in things. So it's just something to consider in your arsenal. But it's always good to have a less than lethal option in the, other than, because once you have a hammer, everything's a nail. So you got to be careful.
I am a fan of the soak. The soak solves that problem. It's not pepper based, so we don't have to have their interview about peppers. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
So soak hurts for 6 or 7 minutes a lot. It causes you to close your eyes. It feels just like OC. It's very similar, but Cindy's right, as hard as it is to admit. But 30 seconds, I mean, is going to be reasonable. If you want a hard-hitting one, you're going to look at Freeze Plus P, which is oleoresin capsicum mixed with CS. I'm from New Mexico. Don't make me say the chemical name. I don't know, but it's tear gas. So you can get a mixed chemical agent that hits pretty fast, pretty now, or you can get something more friendly like soak, or you could get many. But the effect on the person at times will vary. And if I'm in the parking lot and I got time, well, that's great. But if somebody's walking in with something, I mean, it beats nothing.
It does beat nothing.
Yeah. But am I going to depend on it? I mean, I'd rather have an armed response if that's, did that answer your question? Okay. Right, right. So. I'm a fan, but it's like a lot of the things that are on the market nowadays. They look great in sales, and I don't argue the point. But when law enforcement uses it, not necessarily OC or a taser gun, or with a taser gun, there's always, like, I would walk up and I'd OC something, wait for a little while, hopefully something happens. I always had a backup with a lethal option, always. If I went with a taser, same thing. It's 2 probes coming out on a copper wire like a tow missile, and it hits, and if the wider the arc, the better. But clothing being real and leather and heavy canvas, that didn't always happen. And if I go like that and I misdirect the wires, well, I still got a problem. So you always have a lethal threat on the law enforcement side of things. If you don't, you're probably not deploying the right time, depends on your department's policy. But those are things to consider. So if you have an issue out there, I don't know why you wouldn't call law enforcement. At that point, I would tend to like isolate, make sure your people are trained in de-escalation or something. That's another thing with greeters. Are your greeters trained to handle hard conversations? And are they trained to look for the hands? Because why hands? Hands kill. And are they trained to look at the waist and look for oddities around the waist or watch somebody coming in? That's a big security team thing that sometimes we miss, is train your greeters on what to look for, at least for pre-assault stuff. Okay. All
Right. Okay, so for sales, we call it a Schofield rating. And our understanding is that primarily that is for sales. You could say it has a higher Schofield rating, which is more spice to stop the threat, more heat. But the problem is that there's not a universal standard. Whereas with bears, there's a company that is taxed with that, actually studying grizzly bears and making sure that it's efficient and it's going to stop the bear, at least momentarily. It has an approval rating. Where not everything is tested. Like you can buy on Temu ballistic plates, right? So would you trust that? It's just, exactly. So there's a whole lot of things out there that you could, but would you want to? And make sure you try it if you can. Yes. Mm-hmm. right? It's a coordinated effort. It would be a beautiful thing if you had something that would allow you to stop and take, that could provide cover for you momentarily until we could figure out how many threats there are. That would be a beautiful thing. So maybe your lectern has something on it that is a table. But maybe that's a simple thing that you could fix. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage you to have that response to stop the threat.
There's a lot of ways to do that. You could have curtains that are Kevlar. You could dodge behind a curtain. You could put curtains in the nursery room. And they're not that expensive. It depends on your facility. You know it best. My mind jumps to, like, I see pastors armed. I mean, I don't know if that's a great idea because the threat pops up. Pastor's got to draw.
Right.
Well, ideally, you'd have a security element doing that for you and making sure that security element knows how to turn and address the threat. And hopefully you'd have somebody in the lobby and hopefully you'd have somebody in the parking lot. So you'd have a layered, if they got to you, things are really going bad, but hopefully you'd have some sort of indication that's going.
Know how to use your shooting lanes and know how to change elevation also. That's one way to address it. What else did I want to say? Oh, using your voice. Using your voice is powerful, that if you see something that is not all right, I know there wasn't a lot of visibility on that video. It was very small. But there were about 5 people that had an idea of what's happening on the side of that room, and everybody else was sitting there. So when he stood up, no one else even knew that what happened until the shots rang out. So how do we immediately let everybody in the space know that we're dealing with a very big problem? How do we do that? What would be the fastest way to do that? Most pragmatic way to do it? Yes, your voice is a powerful tool. Your voice is yes, absolutely. Your voice is a powerful tool, 100%. The other thing voice is really good at, I'm going to put this down for a second. I'm going to ask you to say, get back. And I like the word get back because you use that hard G and you use the hard B. It's worked for me as my officer. It's worked for me ever since then to use just 2 things I have to think about. Or threat. If he's got a gun, I'm calling out gun. He's got a gun, right? So everybody knows he's got a gun and my face is looking that way. Now, you might laugh, I might laugh at how powerful your voice is, but just a second, give me just a second. Will you put some oomph behind saying get back? I'm gonna count to 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Get back! Feel that for a moment. What did it do? What did that do to your body? It made your heart rate, it made your blood start moving, it took the blood that was sitting in your buttocks and it moved it throughout your whole body, right? That's good because now you're engaged for the fight that came to you. You didn't ask for it, but now you're ready for it, at least much better than you were before. Your voice is a powerful tool.
It also gets you breathing. Everybody holds their breath in these kind of situations. It's very common. They get in a fight, 30 seconds later, they get all tired. So using your voice, using your words gets the blood going and gets the air going. I mean, if your brain doesn't get air, I mean, I don't always think through it either, I grant you, but at the same time, it makes sure that your brain is communicating with the rest of you.
All right, so sometimes the fastest way to do it is just through your voice. Yes, ma'am.
Soak is available through us. Just kidding, we don't sell it.
We don't
So
sell
if
it.
you go on Amazon, or Soak is proprietary, you just type in SOK, chemical spray, it pops right up. SOK, yeah. Oh, that's because I mumble, yeah. But yeah, Soak with a SOK.
What's great about it, so if you've ever used pepper spray, or ever been sprayed with pepper spray, oleocapsicum resin, it has a resinous texture to it. It's sticky, sort of like a skunk. It's gonna be a minute before you get it off. And then additionally, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So you go home to take a shower, and what happens? It burns again, yet again. So ideally, The reason behind soak, and it's such a good thing, is that once that gets into your air returns and things like that, it just dissipates. It's not, it doesn't have that tacky stickiness like skunk spray.
So if it's in an enclosed environment like this, it doesn't gas everybody, or if it does, it's only for 6 or 7 minutes. So
Yes,
there's a lot
ma'am.
of benefit.
Well, it depends, right? It's like yelling fire. Does that create a stampede? Or that's why so much planning needs to take place. That's why we said those elements of that emergency operation plan, you have to be underway with it in order to exactly that. I could say your voice is powerful, and it is. Overcoming the normalcy bias is powerful, and it is. But you don't want to, anyway, I digress. It would get down. When you're person to person, maybe the guy that was standing there, what did he do? I don't know if you could see it. Get down would be great for some people. Sure. The problem with having one solution and one answer is the folks at Columbine, the students there got down per their directive, per their plan. And what was sorrowful was they literally laid there and they said they were waiting for their turn to die. Because they provided an easy target for the person to walk up in at point blank range to kill them. So I can't give you a simple solution or simple phrase, but just realize that your voice is powerful. Yes? Mm-hmm. Right.
And if your team has planned for that and you've practiced it, then yes, that is the way to go for you.
Yes.
Which is a great plan until you have visitors. So you make sure your greeters introduce the visitors to the plan, right? We could go down this road all day. And
It
there's
has to be
things-
the whole plan. It has to be the whole plan, though, really. Thank you for waiting. And we got two here.
Going back to the pastor, I think in a fair amount of cases, the pastor is the target, and we have a guy tasked to get him out of sight to hopefully de-escalate. That's something to think about, because the pastor, a lot of times, could be your target.
Right, and that's the kind of idea of the planning for your church, because the target, the variance, whatever that looks like, it's going to be different at each one of your facilities, and each one of you has a great idea about your facility. Will a one catch-all plan work? Maybe. I mean, it depends. Yeah, it depends on your facility, but the scenarios all change, so probably even that wouldn't work. So you got to, unfortunately, come up with scenarios, walk yourself through it, tabletop it, and see what's going to happen. Personally, I would go back and look at statistically. You can't, it's hard to train for everything as much as we like. Time and money are real, so you're going to have to limit what you can do. Statistically speaking, I go for the high volume stuff. Statistically speaking, they happen in the parking lot, in the lobby. So I would train there first. Then it's the sanctuary, so I would train there next. That's how I would approach it. Where's my threat? Where's my vulnerability? And what's the consequence? That's how I look at it. That's how it's in an industry benchmark, that's how things are looked at. Where's the threat coming from? Where's my vulnerability? And what's my consequence comes down the road.
Right. Training the individual first to see a threat, to understand what a threat looks like, and then how to communicate to others that is indeed we're looking at a threat. How do we do that? So the exercise to get you to use your voice was just simply to understand how powerful the voice is for you to now enter the fight. Not that it was the right words to use in a situation. unless it is in that parking lot or somewhere else. But I agree, something more directive inside the building would be a better course of action. So are you looking for roadblocks? You're not looking for the people that are going to say, no, this isn't for me. Respect that. We each have different gifts. We each have different talents. We're each minded differently to do things. So ask those that are of this mindset, ask the people that are willing, and then put them in a role that they can succeed so they can have a job.
You could also triage that. If I get one or two, I get what I get, right? So where do I, statistically speaking, where's my threat coming from? The parking lot. So statistically speaking, if I have one person, where am I putting them? In the parking lot. My greeters, I still train to look for threats. I still train them to look for the hands, look for odd behavior, look to see if they have anything so they can communicate it. If I have once the church service starts, I bring my person into the lobby and I have them plan out there. And that way, and if nothing, you can talk to somebody, go, hey, look, I know you don't believe this is a threat, but could you watch the door? Would that be cool? I mean, start minor and then go big from there. But if I got one, you gotta have to decide what your vulnerabilities are most, and that's where you use the one. Does that make sense? Okay. I would agree. Yes, I'm sorry. Well, at every point would be my thought, but that's where you sit down with what's important to your parish or your board and decide where you're gonna spend your money or your funds, right? You're gonna sit down, determine your threat, go, what's our biggest vulnerability, and that's what we're gonna mitigate. That's what I would do. That's what, I mean, that is a common practice and it's a very realistic one. So, I mean, in any case, no matter what that threat is, that's what you have to decide. Where's my threat? Where's my vulnerability? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So statistically speaking, I don't have that between big city and rural. But anecdotally, I could think of quite a bit. So once you convince people there's a threat.
That was our idea of sharing the Montana crime stats, violent crime, was to help you see that we don't live in Mayberry. It looks like Mayberry, but it's not necessarily Mayberry. Yes.
Does that exist? Yes. If I'm at the federal level, I'm hearing 2 million, depending on the size of my facility. If I want to involve AI on the private side, I'm hearing about 100 to 150K. If I want AI to determine that, just so you know, can I put you in touch with a company that can do that? Absolutely. What's your question? Right. It could be less. It's coming quickly. Like, as soon as I say 150K, I'm making commercial quality, hardwired, cyber tech stuff. But you could get Blink, right, and put up cameras galore, and it has some AI detection on it. Will it detect a gun? No. It will detect people coming in, and it's still got to be monitored, and you still got to have a response to the person coming in.
I would say cross-train. So the same way we talked about having greeters, you had people at the hospitality table, maybe you had people in the nursery, maybe that they're changing, just like somebody said, it's not the same person in the parking lot all the time, but you're moving and you all have a unique set of skills. Idea is that you all have within your groups people that show up and who are reliable, and maybe you don't use them the same way every time, but they are mission-minded and they want to help, so allow them to help. A person that serves in a nursery isn't necessarily unequipped. Maybe they just need training. I bet you they have a mama bear heart to protect what comes through that door too. Right. So it starts in the parking lot, and then it comes into the foyer, and then it's, yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yes, we've had well, we'll talk afterwards.
Yeah,
Okay,
I could
so
say the
next
same
slide.
thing. We had friends that along the Highway 93 corridor, Revived Church there, a man showed up there as well and said, I'm here to kill people. And it wasn't necessarily taken seriously at first, but how do you recognize a threat? How do you recognize a threat? Well, if they're saying that they're there to be a threat, believe them, right? Sure. Let me just be honest with you. When we were preparing for this class, and there's several iterations of this, and we do site security for other places too, site training, I should say. The problem is that I feel like the blind leading the blind, because I don't know where you are in your journey. I don't know the specifics to your facility. I can only give you generalities. I can only give you what I know has worked in the past, and I can look at examples that have been effective. That's all that I really can do until I see exactly your blueprint, until I see exactly what you're working with as far as team members and what you're able to achieve. That's the frustrating thing about it, is there's not one size fits all. Your site, your home, you and your person are unique to who you are and your unique talents. So how do we help each other? We were talking about that. Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing if you had a coordinator that could move church to church and help you look at what you have, and then this is what your next to-do list is, and then we move that list forward? It would be a beautiful thing if we could do that. Yep.
Right, and then you would hopefully, and I'm sure you did, but contact law enforcement, say we've had this issue. And then you review your procedures. How did he get in? How did he get so far? And then what can we do to fix that? I don't know if it was during business hours or whatever that looks like. Right. So yeah, you would have some, I mean, we get into planning too much and I could go down a rabbit hole. Okay.
All right. We want to use, I think there's a couple more slides. Let's just move that forward if they're still there. All right. When are you legally authorized to use lethal force?
I mean, we all
When are
instinctually
you
know.
authorized to stop the threat at center mass? And why do we shoot center mass to stop a threat? Why do we do that? Major vitals are to stop the threat. Also, important detail, it contains the vertebrae, which is an important backstop for that round so you don't have overpenetration. So making sure that your team knows what type of ammunition to carry, that you're all on the same page with that. You're not carrying something or using something in your firearm that's going to over-perforate and hit unintended targets as well. But when are you legally authorized to use lethal force?
There's elements
Okay.
of self-defense that have to be in place, don't forget. Well, that addresses the crime itself. That's the ability, opportunity, jeopardy, or means, mode of opportunity. But what legal terms, what self-defense law do you have to meet? Right, there's one. That's one.
Okay, but the point here is, as we're going around the room and trying to group think this, that you as an individual, when you act, have to know those details so that you are legally authorized to use force. You have to know that. So the same way that you know how to load the ammunition into your firearm, the same way you know how to maintain it and all those things, you also have to have at the forefront of your mind when you're legally authorized to do that. Otherwise, you're just part of the problem. Honestly, you have to know when. So quick acronym, when are you legally authorized to use force? If somebody shows up on your site and they're with a gun and they're pointing at other people, yes, you don't have to do any more thinking about it. Yes, you could stop the threat, right? But you should have some working knowledge of the legal use of force. The acronym to remember this, to help you remember and quiz each other every day, quiz yourself, it's part of the equation you have to solve. It's life. Your life is threatened. Another's life is threatened, and if you don't apply the use of force righteously, then your life forevermore is on the line about where you're going to spend that. So life is the acronym. No lesser force available and or sufficient. Did you have pepper spray? Could you use it? Would it have been sufficient? Am I going to try? Or is there a delay when I use pepper spray or soak or anything else, and I need to use the rapid way to stop that threat? I would, personally, I'm choosing, if that man's showing up, if a person's showing up with a firearm, I'm using a firearm to stop a lethal threat. If he showed up with a baseball bat, I might try the spray. I might. Okay, we're on L. No lesser force available and or sufficient. I, are you an innocent party? You didn't start it, so you didn't instigate it. At any moment you could, you left it. If you could diffuse it, you would. F, you have that fear for your life or the life of another due to an immediate threat.
And then E, escape or avoid. Did you look to escape or avoid it? Did you get out when you could? It should be your last resort to go to lethal. And as part of a security team, and good on you, but you're losing a couple of those if you're going to go to lethal force. You're interjecting yourself in that fight on behalf of the church. So if blood is spilled, and hopefully it is never, whose life, time, and treasure is going on liability, and who's defending who? Do you have that agreement in the church? Do you have that agreement to yourself? Because if you're the one that used force, guess whose time and money is going on the line? That would be yours. So I would be sure that like I said, it's at your base. Policy and insurance and the boring stuff is what's at the base of all this. And because if the church happens, lethal is certainly a thing, but a use of force is vastly more likely. And if that were to occur, I guarantee you they're going to trip and fall. It's your fault. Who's going on? Who's defending who? Who's taking what liability? And what's the insurance cover? Keeping it real. What does that look like for you? And if you're going out to lethality because you have to, because that fight came to you, well, good, but I hope you're accurate and I hope your church is on the same page as you are.
Because it'll all be held up to what we call the reasonable person standard. And we have to look at each other and say, how many people would you qualify as reasonable in your everyday life? I'm being facetious, but think about that. How many people would you want on your jury panel? And the reason why I ask this is because in law enforcement, we saw a number of very good officers use force righteously to stop a threat. There was no other way to solve that problem, and they did so. But then their life completely unraveled over the scrutiny that was applied to them. So having a way to cover your 6 beyond the use of force is important. I want to go back to E also, because exiting, is there a way for you to egress or exit the situation? It doesn't mean you leave another person behind, so children, somebody that's not ambulatory. It doesn't require that you do that. I didn't want to mislead anybody there. When we teach these, it's mostly on the personal level, and then I want you to see beyond that too, because the threat, you will recognize it as the individual you are. Does that make sense? And you'll have to decide for yourself whether or not force is justifiable to the reasonable person standard. Will a jury of your peers see what you saw the same way? If not, or even if so, you're going to need some help telling your story. You're going to need some help walking through this. And we know that because we have a number of very fine officers who did exactly what we did. When I say their life unraveled, their family unraveled. Oftentimes they ended up in a divorce. They would lose custody of their kids because they would become unstable oftentimes. They would end up being suicidal, on and on. And I'm just saying that if they know in the scope of working that they might have to take use of force, I can imagine that an everyday person is going to come unraveled to some degree too. So you're going to need somebody to help you cover yourself in prayer, in function also legally. You're going to need some help walking through that. And going back to USCCA, which brought us here today, sponsored us to be here, they're great. They're great. If you don't go with USCCA, there's other insurance companies out there, but you need some way to cover your bases if you use force, because getting a hold of an attorney today with the population explosion we had, it's not happening. You might not get in touch with an attorney for 6 months, truly. And you might not get in touch with an attorney who would actually represent you in defense of lethal force. There's not that many specialists with USCCA as a member. I don't sell USCCA, but I would never carry the tool without the insurance. And because USCCA has done right by me so many ways, that's who I choose. And as far as education, I've not plumbed the depth. We've provided hopefully some food for thought, some education, but USCCA, I have not plumbed the depth of what is there online. So if you're in your pajamas, you can get educated. If you're sitting there and you got 5 minutes, you can do the app on your phone. It's a great resource. I highly recommend it.
So one thing to remember, like USCCA is great. I mean, certainly cover it, but it ain't cheap, right? Because think of the liability attached. And they cover you if it's self-defense and if you're a volunteer. So a lot of churches have opted like, well, we'll cover our own people. Well, that coverage becomes a payment. So check in with your insurance company as to what that looks like. And you may have to require as a policy that your person who's on the security team is covered. That's entirely up to you and your church. I totally get it. But just be wary of it, because nothing's free, right? We all know this. Everybody's been around the block, or twice. So, I mean, just keep that in mind when you're there with your security team. What are they doing? And two, like Cindy already touched on it with CCW, have you vetted them? Have you checked to the standard to which they could operate? And have you really looked at your own armed security, and are they looking at the right spots? I can't iterate that enough. It's not just a security team. I would say security is everybody's responsibility to some extent. If you have 2 or 3, then you start to talk to your other volunteers, the greeters, anybody else that's willing to help, and just let other people know. All right, I think that's all. That's my soapbox. I just coming down. Okay.
We just want to help you move the ball forward. So we want to be a resource for you to do that. I know that Chance would too if he's here. We have his card if that insurance speaks to you. Again, you have to be insurance salesman in Montana to sell insurance. We are not that. But like I said, if you're defending yourself against a grizzly bear, would you do that? Would you defend yourself against a grizzly bear? I would too. I am not on the menu. Neither are any of the members of my family. So if I'm on a trail and it's a grizzly bear, I am working to stop that threat as well. What's the problem if you're stopping a grizzly bear? And it's a federally protected species. Okay, and you might be on tribal land, so now it might be a compounded problem. So how much money is that going to cost you? Let's just talk grizzly bears. A lot of money. It's going to cost you a lot of money to defend yourself and to prove that you were right in doing so and justified in doing so. USCCA will help you even if it's against a grizzly bear. If you're going to use the shopping cart because you're in the parking lot and somebody came after you there, they will defend you if you defend yourself with a shopping cart. It's not just firearm related. And since you showed up, I see you as defenders. And because you're a defender, you need the other way to cover your 6. And covering your 6 means not bankrupting your family when you exercise that defense of self or another. All right.
With that said, it is 5 o'clock. We don't want to hold anybody hostage. But if you have any questions, we're here for a little while. And if not, thank you for coming out. We had a good time. Hopefully it was informative. And Cindy's got, I don't know how to, anyway, pistol and pluck, all right, .com or something. All right, thanks.